Dzień dobry, witajcie. Koleżanki i koledzy, pozwolę sobie na taką powłość.
Dear colleagues, I will be speaking to you not as ladies and gentlemen as per you, because I do believe that if you are here in person, if you are in front of the screens, that means that children matter to you most, and that's the same for me, and this is why I'm here with my assistant. This is a teddy bear from Janek Węski, who was also an ombudsman for children's rights. This is my talisman. So wherever I deal with children's safety or I do something for the children, this teddy bear is with me, and that's practically all the time. So the title of my presentation is also a challenge, because I have the pleasure of opening this plenary part. So when we talk about the street, may initially seem far away from cyberspace. However, I will show you that that's not really the case. So this is the plan, so that I would have a certain framework to move around and I speak with you. And okay, as an introduction, I wanted to mention that, and I don't want to talk about it, to boast about myself, but I wanted to show you that academics, we don't just sit at the desk. We are also at your disposal for teachers, for pedagogues, for the kids. So whenever there is something that gets out of control, or where we don't have the knowledge yet, we bring you our knowledge and our space. So in this context, I want to tell you that I'm not just a scientist and an academic sitting, at my desk and just doing research. So the very first picture makes me smile, because I used to have a series of meetings in kindergartens, and I used to go talking about poor children in Poland, and I showed them this picture, the kids this picture, and I asked them, guess where I work? And the kids say, in a church. So, well, it makes me smile. And then I received the award, the Janusz Korczak award. And when I received it, I thought to myself, oh gosh, now I have done something that I will have to deal with this award. I have to do more with it. And I started thinking about what is happening. And because I research the street, I work out in the streets also as ethnology, but I work in the areas that are excluded, and this is where the kids fulfill their needs in the street. I managed to reach out and meet over 15 such organizations. I spent over a month in public spaces and on my bike. But I just wanted to also talk about a metaphor. And what has happened that we have started to look for the street over the internet, and it's been only 3 years when that shift changed. So at some point, when I realized many different things and what is happening, I felt helpless. And I do believe that there are moments when you feel helpless as well, because 2 or 3 years ago, we believed that we know everything. And all of a sudden, it turned out that the kids have skipped our attention. They got out, and they are no longer just in shopping centers or in the street, but they are online. And the street online is so wide, it has no boundaries, and we are looking for children when we are lost ourselves, and the kids have been lost for a long time. So when I have been working with social workers, with the street workers and activists in the street, the most common image that I saw was this image. Kids who are 3, for out in the street for the whole day, no adults, but they always have a phone with them. Because in the spaces that I research and I deal with, those parents are of the opinion that when these kids have a phone in their hands, they are being cared for. There was no care. The kids would sit like this for 2 or 3 hours. They would not react to, encouragement to start a conversation, to participate in any game. And so they are out here and they are simply in one of the deserted yards with no adults in the streets. And so the street workers around the globe come across this image. And they say that the most common image is a child, even from favelas, from the slums. The child that has no education, is emaciated, hungry, but that child has a phone in their hands. And so the question that we are asking ourselves is what this child is looking for in those virtual spaces, and also why even the street has become so unfriendly that metaphorically they have moved that street online. So the first story, I would like to start with this narrative. This is a story that is a real story. So a teenage schoolgirl, like her friends, sat constantly with, their faces in their mobile phone. Well, she was nodding that she heard what was being said, responding with laughter to her peers, but in reality, every person sat by themselves. And so, when they were asked a question, what are you doing? So that we spend time together. We sit together. We all like to sit like this. And have a look. Together, we all like to sit like this. What does it mean, we all? And what does it mean together when everybody is with their face in the mobile phone? So this was a teenager, so she didn't have much patience for adults. So at some point she said, well, she cried out, she shouted, "You keep criticizing us for looking at our mobile phones and telling us to put them down and see what the world really looks like. But we know perfectly well what it looks like, and that's why we escape from it into our phones." And the second story is that the guy said that he's being scolded by the teachers, that he is in his phone, and he has his phone in the hand because he is taking notes on his phone. So the question is, what does it mean to be with your face in your phone these days? Yes. And then there was also my PhD student who was running research about street children, children who do not go to school. They have a very difficult life and have a difficult situation. So, there was a question that came up very often. Where are all the children from the yards? Because those kids are gone. So very often adults would say, the kids are at home on the internet. And so I allowed myself to talk with the adults about the teenagers and what they think about teenagers.
And these are the most common answers given by adults. So these messages addressed to children is don't sit on your phone when you eat. Don't put the phone away. If you don't do better at school, I will take your phone away. And what do teenagers say? Because I often ask children and young people what they think about a given topic. Teenagers say, "But I have notes on my phone. But on YouTube, I have math classes and I learned from those classes. Online, I learned to rap from the internet. I learn English best from videos. In summer holidays, I go to my friend who's great, and got to know her online. There are tests from the Matura exam online, and so on and so forth. So if I want to have coffee with my friend, I would say, well, be smart in such a situation. Nonetheless, I want to encourage you to ask questions. If it's possible that we suddenly, all of a sudden, in fact, that our worlds of adults and teenagers, that we have really diverted in those worlds. The second question that I want to find an answer together with you is whether is it true that in the 21st century, when we are dealing on the one hand with many crises, on the other hand with such a situation that of digital development, that our needs, human needs, have really changed so much in the 21st century? And the third question, where's the street on the internet? I'm not going to focus on the hierarchy of needs. We will work more on the Thursday's webinar with this needs pyramid. But I want you just to look, whether we look at it as a hierarchy, as a pyramid, it's important that we go back to this tool as a basic tool that allows us to look at a child or at a teenager as a person who perhaps takes up some activities because he or she has some need unsatisfied and tries to find a way to satisfy such a need. If we look in this way at the situation, then is it true that our needs have really changed? We still feel hungry as people. When it's cold, we wanted to change the situation. We want to be accepted, we want to be needed, noticed, we want to have feedback from the world, whether we do something right or wrong. We want to have this avatar, I see you. So I encourage you, and I also talked about it when cooperating with NASC on cyber prophylaxis, that we all go back paradoxically to the beginnings and think through the prism of hierarchy of needs what it is in fact that young people seek online. And if I were trying to be a bit mean, I would say start from yourselves and ask first what you are looking for, because it is also important why we sit online in the evening scrolling social media. I introduced the concept of a street. So briefly, as a researcher of urban studies trend, I'm not treating the street as a lane of asphalt between buildings, but as a certain cultural context. It is a sort of culture where particular groups are founded. And let's remember it in this way, that the street creates our identity. It has impact on the people who are on the street. It is as forming space. And why? Because we will see later what it looks like online. Of course, in literature we have such concepts of subculture of the street and so on and so forth. This is not important at this point. What is important is that you note how much the place where we are at creates our identity, customs, lifestyle, way of thinking and perceiving the world. Because right now we are still in the real world. I want to say a few words on the situation in people who really fulfill most of their needs in the space of the street, and the street is such a safe haven where they can realize themselves. Usually what is indicated is the loyalty of people from the same community, from a given group. Later, when I started to research gangs, such slogans were said as brothers are important, all for one for all. So this is basically the loyalty. The second thing, hostility towards strangers, towards others, towards those who don't belong to our group. And usually, the space of the street becomes attractive for people who have limited life opportunities, who for various reasons cannot fulfill their life needs from different levels in at homes, at school, or in some institution, organization, after-school clubs, in some place that should, by definition, be a place securing fulfillment of such needs. Another important thing, the omnipresence of violence. I'm coming back to that later. Anti-system approach, distrust in all institutions, politics, lack of trust towards politicians, rejection of social institutions, and having as the street code, which provides a framework for behaviors and gives the sense of safety in the space of the street, which by definition is open, unlimited, and if the young people go to the street, they have unlimited ways of possibilities of actions. When dealing with this for many years in Poland, I often heard the questions in scientific conferences, where have you seen people on the streets in Poland? You can see it in Brazil, in Mexico, on videos. And Dariusz Faron, as journalist, invited me to cooperate with his reportage. We had a tour around Poland where children and adolescents stayed on streets, where they escape home violence on the streets. So Wirtualna Polska is the portal where you can read this reportage. The facts are at the moment such that we know that there are children of the street in Poland. They are present. These are children who often escape the system or who neglect their education, who aren't covered by the social services support. We are dealing with so-called disappearing families, which protect their children, but in the bad sense of the word. They protect them from the social support. And in the international literature, these children are termed as invisible children. Why am I saying that? I'm going slowly to pass to the digital world. The concept on invisible environment appeared quite recently when the first wave of immigrants in the United States coached as social workers, teachers, pedagogues. They became helpless. They feel helpless because the system of value of people who would come then by ships to the United States, their behavioral patterns, communications, faith, religion, they were difficult to understand. And the success was on the part of those workers who would enter the groups and try to understand their system of narrative, interpersonal communication, the way they treated one another, family hierarchy, and so on and so forth. And then this term invisible category was coined, and later it started to function in the description of children who not only from migrating families, but also others, children whose parents were in penitentiary isolation or children of the street. So this term was started to be used in such aspects of institutional invisibility, and we don't know how many children at the moment, colloquially speaking, have dropped out the educational system after the pandemic and never returned to the educational system. So this is an example of invisibility of such children, quite an obvious example. When many years ago I performed research on łódzkie bałuty, in which I learned that children are born who for 2 years don't have their registration number. So these children disappear from the system. Another aspect of visibility is limiting contact with parents or other guardians. Usually, this relates to children whose parents are in prison or for some other reasons are disconnected from children. And the last category, unmet needs. So as an adult, for example, I don't see to the needs of the children, of the teenagers, and this causes them to be invisible. A few photographs so you can see which places I reach. The minister left us, unfortunately, but I think that the Polish state should be ashamed, and I say it loudly and with full responsibility that children stay in such places. These are very bad conditions. I managed to reach them to the gates where these people spend their time and fulfill their needs. When an adult comes to such places, a responsible person, this is usually a pedagogue, a teacher, where non-governmental organizations conduct their activities. The children are, I'm not going to use this word, taken care of. All kinds of nooks, spaces where children spend their time in Poland. It's still the real life part of this presentation. I apologize for the vulgar words. I'm not the author, but they have their purpose that I'm going to explain in a moment. Because children are constantly immersed in such an environment. I think all of you know this picture. This is the backyard where for some time the late Kamil from Częstochowa was raised. I visited several such places in Poland. A symbolic situation. I don't know if you can guess what kind of building this is. Probably have the various thoughts. Let me tell you, this is a social welfare center in one of the places in the Silesia district, and this is a place where next to this area there are children living in burnt houses. This is a very symbolic photograph for me because it in a way presents in a very tangible way that even in places where a child could seek support, these places are closed down. They are completely blocked from use. Just you can see the symbolic picture that presents that. What the children most often experience in such places, I have a cloud with most common categories taken from the what you could see on the walls. So I apologize from the vulgar words, but please realize that if I filtered all the vulgar words, there wouldn't be any research material left. So be aware that what kind of things children are immersed in some spaces. It turns out that not, and there are quite a few such spaces, such places. To sum up, this part concerning children on the streets in Poland, because we do know they do exist, the definition of the Council of Europe brings an end to our stereotypical thinking of the children of the street. These aren't children that are born and stay and die on the street, as it is the case in some countries of the world, because it is noted that in each country of the world there is a phenomenon of the children of the street, and these are simply children that fulfill majority of their basic needs in the space of the street. The street is treated symbolically as backyards, shopping malls, basements, attics, different kinds of places where children gather without care. Sometimes they stay there the whole day, because the second part of the definition says that children of the street sometimes have a home. that is a roof over their heads, but it's so a house, but not in the psychological and social understanding. So often we have children who, for example, are under the care of social services. So in the documents we see that they have a home or they stay in a place for victims of violence, where in fact they don't have a home. They stay at such an institution, usually with the mother. These are often children with stolen childhood, as it is coined, who are deprived of children's rights, and often these are children who, for some reason not entirely known rationally, they are not under the care of the system for some reason. The pictures that you can see here are pictures taken by me. They are not artistic, it's just my research materials. Please note what kind of hiding places they create in excluded areas, and they spend their time there. They took those things from the dumpster, they created a base. These are familogs in one of the Silesian, so slums in one of the Silesian cities. It was the children were giving me a tour around their space. In this picture, children in the street in Poland are often victims of home abuse. Remember that abuse and violence, it's not just it's also the neglect. So one of the provoking questions, I'm not afraid to pose such questions, isn't it true that we are dealing with systemic violence, abuse against those children, since their basic needs aren't fulfilled, since they don't have the conditions to fulfill their basic needs? They often experience the crisis of homelessness. As I mentioned, sometimes they stay in attics, in basements, in various institutions where they in fact do not have homes. Children in a refugee crisis, or children that run away from institutions, from foster homes for various reasons. So there's quite a lot, right? And still we are in the real life aspect. We are on the real street that we have so far managed to define, and now we can move on to activities that are aimed at securing the good of the children through the protection of adolescents and children. One thing we did, and another challenge is ahead of us, but this will be discussed in a moment. Usually, when talking about invisible children, children of the street, I'm using the term poverty, but not only in understanding material poverty, but also social and moral poverty. Because if in a moment we start talking about digital street, you will see that the majority of people who, as I call it, wander around the cyberspaces, they are also morally deprived because they are in a community, in a place without a system of a value system.
I will be checking my time. I do keep control of that. I don't know whether you are aware of it, but now about the youth gangs, because at some point it started to be connected with the internet violence of children and youth. Because up until recently we have been doubting whether we have real gangs in the streets in Poland. However, these groups have moved online. And so, whereas I'm still asked where have I seen gangs of children and young people in the streets, well, they are active, especially when you've got sports club. So then we talk about those gangs moving online. So I would like to draw your attention to two things. What is the evolution of those playgroups, so to speak, when they used to have fun, into criminal groups? because this is what happens when we move online. So initially they are play and criminal groups, and it is true that children say, no, it's just a game. We are only playing here. However, if to this, we are only playing here, you talk about, playing gangsters, bullying, stigmatization, when you also do fraudulent things, when you want to have some profit, not even material profit, but sometimes increasing your self-worth at someone's cost, we need to ask ourselves the question, is that only a game? It's just playing? And this is when we talked about the 1920s, 1930s. This was when those guys came in. 100 years later, we can see how the reality has changed. Those play and criminal groups, they evolved into criminal groups. And they are a very good exercise ground to exercise and learn different behaviors that break the law. So now we move on to the cyber streets. So now just try to move some of those situations I have mentioned, move them online, because then it turns out that some of the behaviors are the same, with one exception. We have no control over them at that time. So when we talk about the cyber street, that already works that way, we need to take the condition metrics. And so we have got the technological and information context. Also, the pandemic COVID-19 has caused the focus of participation to change with the prevalence. Yeah? We have got digital participation. That was the prevalence of digital participation. And, some street workers said that we are going to be jobless soon because the kids are disappearing from the streets. And I wasn't sure what was happening up to the moment because I heard that from my colleagues abroad. And I wasn't sure what they are talking about until we saw that kids are disappearing from our yards. And we thought that the worst thing that we will be dealing with is what we see in the streets as street workers, as pedagogues as well. It's not the worst thing. So the question started coming up. So where is the street online? Yes? And so I would like to draw your attention to this comparative analysis, because if we used to compare the activity of children on the real street, it would be the time and also openness. The child spends the time the way they want to. And this is why of those activities are sometimes on the verge, on the thin line, what's legal, what's illegal, or they are breaking the law. So this was the activity as fulfillment of needs, curiosity, adventure, different opportunities, contact with peers, interests, and also, getting some goods. Then success and promotion as well. So this is when you are seen as an individual and you can become more popular as well. So the street used to give a certain framework where there used to be different rules for the children. I'm not going to discuss if they break the rules, legal rules or not, but that's the way it was. But what about the cyber street? Well, it turns out that it is very similar. That there's always a good time to go online. The social media always have time for you. It's a space where we can spend time with unlimited time, and there are always people there. Even if there is no one around me, they will always find someone online. And the same for the street in the real world, yes? And then the activity, well, it's similar. Very often it is about science, fact, and curiosity, about every talking. It can be the excitement that they want something else, unlimited possibilities, and also achieving success quickly. For example, by likes, positive comments, or that someone takes interest in me at all. And then we have got also a certain framework. So on social media, there are certain rules set by the administrator, but also with online games, we also have certain rules. And so the cyber street came up that is no longer in the real world, that is online. Minister Gawkowski mentioned that now we live in a dual reality and no one opposes this view any longer. However, when I work with children and trying to understand what's happening, it is mostly emotionally neglect, excessive time online, and also cyber content that's used without any control, any supervision. And so I have this comparative analysis regarding street children and cyber street children. It is just that this wandering has now moved online. It is looking for adventure. There is the risky behavior, the same way as is the real street. It's just that now we also have the cyber addiction. It is also that it's very easy to break norms. For example, access to illegal psychoactive substances. It's just that, it's easier on the cyber street, yeah? And now, please have a look at this slide and please bear in mind at least 2 or 3 points. So why? Because we are trying to find out, get the answer for what the children and young people look for in a deviant groups on the street. And well, the question is, what do they look for online? And you can see they look for the same things. The difference is just one. Cyberspace cannot be controlled. And that is something that us adults were surprised by, because up until now we thought that there are other real occurrences that are getting out of control. So what is happening? We have got a different identity. And so we have got people who in the real world are socially maladjusted, demoralized. It's a young bandit, young criminal. Nothing good will come out of this person. They are getting no education, etc., etc. And then it turns out that this person online is a leader of a peer community. So this is when you feel you are successful, you are a leader here. He's a creator, for example, writes poems, creates hip-hop lyrics, takes photos, records music. This demoralized young bandit is a pretty good photographer, writes pretty good poems, supports peer-to-peer support. I don't go into what kind of support it is, because sometimes it is, counseling how to evade legal consequences. However, they provide peer support. So who are we dealing with here? Where is this person real? And there was one lecture that I concluded with, where is the street online? Some time has passed. I have been now looking for the answer with my students. There are 2 MA theses that are being written about it. So we have been looking for the street online, and the platform that got us interested And well, TikTok is well now, but Tumblr exists as well. And well, I know that my time is drawing to an end, but Tumblr, that's the study of destruction. This is where people, young people, invite others to self-destructive behaviors, to suicide, to things that are dangerous not only to their health, but also to their lives. And I'm going to also talk about it during the webinar. And this is about the romanticizing of psychological and psychic disturbances. One of my students is writing about it at the moment, but there is a new phenomenon that makes us adults which needs young people fulfill and meet by romanticizing psychic disorders. And then there is also pseudo self-advocacy that can lead to different issues. And another aspect that we are analyzing now, and that is the Sean patrol. It is a little bit in cyberspace and some in reality. And so we can treat the space as one, because it's very interesting for me that it's spilling out of cyberspace and cyber street onto the real street. But I believe we are going to still run research about it, we'll talk about it, and we'll interpret this phenomenon. Thank you very much for your attention, for your patience. That you decided to listen to me, and it will be a great pleasure to host and see you, some of you at least, during my webinar. And just remember that we academics are at your disposal. Thank you.